Good evening. This is A Mind of Valor by Westerfield Tolbert. This is day 15. If you have been following me in this series, and you know I've committed to going live at least once a day for 30 days to discuss a variety of topics, primarily around A Mind of Valor, what it stands for. And also, I've been working to strengthen my powers to go live and my ability to utilize this platform to disseminate a message and to add value to the public discourse around a variety of issues. Tonight, it will be a bit of a brief broadcast. I was going to dive into the topic of values tonight, along with talking about our overarching theme of asking better questions and more critical questions. But tonight I decided instead that I would go brief. I'll discuss values tomorrow. I was looking through some notes and I came across a passage that I had written earlier in January, and I had not published this particular piece. I was still wrestling with some of the ideas in it. So I decided that tonight I wanted to just read this piece and make it a brief show. So, without further ado, I will go into this piece and let's see what comes of it. Now, I wrote this in January. What inspired the piece initially was this idea of legacy and what we want to be remembered for, and what about ourselves is unforgettable or makes us unforgettable to the people around us and to community and our culture and vice versa. So let me just pull this up and bear with me, and I will read the piece. I will post the words to the particular text on my website, westolbert.com. That's WES, T as in Tom, OLBERT.com. My blog is called Westerfields and A Mind of Valor. So let's read this and give me some feedback. All right. Time has both given and taken away many significant figures in my life. Over the last few years, I have lost quite a few people. Some of them left this earth very unexpectedly, prematurely, way before their time. Others knew it was coming. They could feel it in the air, or they could feel it in the core of their bodies. The one question that I hope they had all had a chance to answer, and the one that I think about most these days, is what I want my legacy to be. What stands between the capital at the beginning and the period at the end? It is a thought that requires equal measure between what you want to be remembered for and what you are doing during your lived experience that is unforgettable. This idea of being unforgettable is heavily weighted towards the impression we leave on those around us and the environment. The burden falls on us to answer these questions while upright and in our right minds. Once our period comes, there are no additional edits or rewrites, no further drafts to be submitted. No, when that time comes, hope is left, and all that we are left with is the reflection of our lived experience, the things that we want to be remembered for, and the things that we are doing right now that are unforgettable. Take a moment during these early days of 2024 and ask yourself, am I living in the way that I would want to be remembered? Do my deeds and my actions, my hobbies, my pastimes, my work and trades Reflect the parts of myself that I want to be unforgettable. Have I painted my canvas with the best possible version of what I would want hanging around in my absence? It is not too late if you are reading this and asking yourself these questions. Even if your internal battery is screaming otherwise at you, if you are reading this or listening to this, it is not too late. Sometimes all we need is our last breath to grant an apology or accept the truth or a new perspective. I don't know who needs to hear this message, but go after that thing, explore that curiosity, and reject those objects that are only taking you away from your purpose, the very thing that would extend your battery's life. If it is temporary and fleeting today, then chances are it will also be temporary and fleeting tomorrow, but with less time. Since we don't know how much time we have left, right now is the most important time. Your ideas deserve to be put into the universe. I want to see what the best version of yourself would produce, or at a minimum, what a fighting you looks like, and not just one that laid down because it was the easy route. Meeting your period in the end, while still concealing your highest aspirations, is a disservice to all the ancestors who fought and survived just so you could claim a little bit of life. There will come a time to lay it all down. That particular hour is not ours to decide. What is ours to decide is how we spend all those minutes up until then. How many nights we went to bed early when we could have danced just a little longer. The moments that we were selfish and held back when we could have just been a little kinder. Our choice to dismiss rather than engage those areas that made us uncomfortable. And how many times, despite our better judgment, we rejected authenticity to conform to spaces that didn't deserve us in the first place. For every yes that we choose, we are automatically giving equal measure to a no somewhere else in our universe. We must choose our yeses with just as much scrutiny as we choose our nos. But just don't forget to make every choice that is available to you. Don't discard or relegate your choices to someone else and think it's making you more efficient, because in reality, we are limiting through those actions our own free will. When our conscience interrogates us in those last minutes, when in that last minute flashes before us, don't let the idea that you gave it all away willingly be trapped in your last breath or falling tear. As the author and subject of this great work, you are entitled to write it without compromise, and as your imagination sees it within its maximum potential. Do you see your maximum potential, or only the limitations imposed by your environment? Do the impossible and feel encouraged. For there were near impossible odds for you to be reading this or listening to this at this exact moment. Yet, here you are, and here we are. I came across some mathematics that said for you to be born today, from 12 previous generations, you needed a total of 4,095 ancestors. Therefore, we are truly our ancestors' wildest dreams come true. And if that is the case, then trust that everything that we've ever needed was first planted deep down inside of us. And like a plant, it just requires the right environment to extend towards the heavens. Also, like a plant, will bend, weave, and adjust, but will always grow towards the light. What expectations do you have of life? Considering what we receive from this life is in direct response to what we contribute. What are you willing to contribute? Our contributions being this unbiased, objective metric that echoes our own effort, merit, and willingness to manifest into our own treasure chest. What returns will be goodwill excellence on par with material growth, and healing in abundance. The echo is ours to choose, all other things being equal, of course. This process can be repeated multiple times between our capital in the beginning and our period in the end. I wrote that in January. I don't know where my mind was at or what pushed the thought to the forefront. But when I start the passage saying that I've lost quite a few people in the last couple of years, that was in earnest. I've had great friends. I had a great friend who just a couple of years ago totally surprised our small friend group, and he took his own life. Blew all of our minds because among all of us, he was definitely the smartest, and we would have considered him probably the strongest and the smartest. That same year, I lost my father. He was murdered in a home invasion and still unsolved, right? And I know for those two individuals, in the end, they knew something. For my friend that took his own life, rest in peace, he knew that making that choice would leave a particular memory behind or a legacy that the people who he left behind would have to adjust to and come to terms with. My dad, on the other hand, didn't expect it and didn't see it coming. And they both left a lasting legacy with the people that were left behind. In either scenario, we are tasked with considering what we are doing today, right now, what we're planning for tomorrow, what we take into consideration as valuable, what we are leaving behind, what we're preparing for the next generation. There's a quote, I'll paraphrase, that says something to the effect of, a wise man plants a tree that he may never sit in the shade of, or something to that effect. So what trees are we planting? There's a particular line that I said in the passage that, like a plant, we are born with everything that we need, deeply embedded in our DNA. And all we need is the right environment to grow and to materialize, right? And like a plant, will bend and weave and adjust, but will always go towards the light. How are we bending and weaving and adjusting right now so that we're always moving towards our highest aspiration and the best possible good for both ourselves and in our communities? What steps are we taking to make those things a reality? These are tough questions, but it goes without saying that they must be asked. We must ask ourselves these things. We must ask the people we're in community with, so we know that we're not just biding our time, but we are truly making the most of that time and making the most of our relationships, that we're being the most responsive that we can possibly be to the environment and the people around us, that we are taking the time to develop the best possible attitude to handle whatever life can throw at us or will throw at us, that we are careful and considerate with nurturing that internal dialogue and the language that we use, not just towards ourselves, but the communities at large that we experience, our families, our friends, how are we engaging them? That we are, with everything in us, rejecting vices and conformity and striving for something better. That we are taking the time to make our vision a reality and not limiting what is possible for ourselves. And then in the end, being resolved to see it through all the way. How are we orienting our lives so that we produce? What is your legacy? What do you intend for your legacy to be? If we are not consciously making an effort to build that legacy and to create a foundation for our friends and families and ourselves, then what are we really doing with the time that we have? How can we say truly that we love our lives and that we appreciate the blessings that God gave us if we take things for granted and we're not doing anything to prepare for tomorrow? I feel like preparation for tomorrow is love in action, you know, that's having enough belief and confidence and trusting that the Almighty will present a tomorrow to us. And in the event that tomorrow is snatched from us unexpectedly, we've done something today to ensure that our legacy doesn't die with us. It could be the written word, it could be um, these visual memories that will live long past us. It could be the way we treat our people that we're in relationship with, the lessons that we teach them. All these things become a part of our legacy that will have staying power long after we're gone. Think about my grandfather, both of them really. I never had an opportunity to meet either one of them because of the circumstances of life. Disease, on one hand, took my maternal grandfather when I was really young, and political uprising, war, took my other grandfather. So both of these men were absent from my lived experience, but the contributions that they made to their families, communities, country has staying power that has lasted decades and decades and can still be reflected on. So it's a choice that we make. It's the sacrifice that we make. Don't don't take it for granted. In the speech or in the text that I read, I mentioned that if we relegate our choices to other things and other people, in particular to something that I talked about on day 8, our vices. If we let our vices control our life, if we let bad attitudes from day 12 that we spoke about control our lives, then we are limiting our choices. And at some point, when we really want to have that autonomy and that choice available to us, if we've given it away so often, we may lose it, right? Or that when we want to access it, we won't have access to it. If you've spent all your money on drugs, alcohol, women, entertainment, et cetera, and then an opportunity to sow into something or someone else or an investment or your family comes along and you no longer have the resource, that right there is an example of how your vices have snatched away your autonomy and snatched away your choices. If you are silent more often than you need to be, when you should be speaking up about issues or about the things that are confronting you internally and you're just sitting with those things, you're silencing yourself. Therefore, you're silencing the choices that you have. You don't always know how people will react to the things that we say or our actions. But if something needs to be said or expressed and you are holding on to it and you don't, you just cut yourself off from the beginning. You've just took away your own capacity to do something different or to engage. And then at the end of the day, you really don't know what will come back. But if you don't engage, I can tell you what, you will have nothing. So on this day, I just want you to just really think critically about what you're doing to preserve your legacy, to build your legacy. And what about yourself right now, if nothing else, is unforgettable? Again, if you're in community with people that you trust, make an exercise out of it. Ask them, say, hey, what about me is unforgettable? If I were to be gone right now, what would you remember the most? And think about how you interact with people already. And you can answer part of that question for yourself. If you come to realize that you're leaving behind a trail of carnage and devastation and heartbreak and mistrust and all these other negative ideas, it's like you have the moment right then and there to pause and decide how you want to shift and adjust and pivot to produce something different, to produce something new. If you're fine with that type of poison, then that's your business. If you want to be remembered for being a snake, then that's what it'll be. But if you want something greater, then you pivot. You make a new decision. You put yourselves in a position to do something more with your time and your effort and your resources and your capacity. No one can force you to make these changes. You're not a child. No one's going to hold a gun to your head or your feet to the fire. You have to be willing and able. And if those two things come together with the right attitude and the right mindset, there's really no telling what is possible. Your wildest dreams. It's unimaginable because it's so vast. It's farther than you've ever thought. It's higher than you've ever thought. So let that legacy be something. Let that memory of you be of good, kind, love, empathy, righteousness, and leave a trail of love behind you rather than something contrary to that. Things to think about. At the end of the day, no one can force you into any particular position. The effort has to come from you. And I'm asking, I'm pleading with you to think about these things. Don't just think about the money or the material things, because, those things can fade away, and they eventually will. The books will eventually fade away. Oral tradition and legend and these other things will have way more staying power. Heck, that's how people live forever. And that's how people live forever. Okay. And on that note, I will conclude tonight's broadcast. It's May 15th, day 15. The rest of this week is going to be kind of crazy. I got a wedding in South Lyons, Michigan this weekend. I'll be in Minneapolis, Minnesota next weekend. And then I might be in Atlanta for Memorial Day weekend, or for Memorial Day. So we're all over the place. But we will do it with love, with grace, and with an appreciation for the world, for ourselves, and for the sacrifices of the people that came before us. Here to make the ancestors proud, one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on day 15. Have a good night.